The Nigerian government says fake news, disinformation, and hate speech are the antics of the naysayers. They believe it poses real threats to the nation's unity. We dissect the issues and find out why in a bit. The federal government is frowning at fake news. To them, the rising trend is not funny. Neither do they think it is done without motive. The most recent of such fake news was a story about the president traveling to the United States. That news flourished online, and unsuspecting members of the public consumed that piece of information. The reactions were already negative. The Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed, rubbished the reports, describing them as fake news. The source of the fake news is one of the numerous parody Twitter accounts in the minister's name. The Information and Culture Minister explained that recent developments and justified the concerns about the misuse of the social media. I have joining us on the program tonight the Special Advisor on Media and Publicity to the President, Mr. Femi Adesina, in our Abuja studio. And here in Lagos, I have the Senior Editor and a member of Editorial Board and columnist of the Guardian newspaper, Mr. Martins Oloja. Many thanks for coming on the program. Let's go to major story of the day, Mr. Adesina. In February of this year, the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, said the country is under siege of disinformation and fake news that can bring the country on her knees if not checked. He did say again earlier this year that the federal government will not relent until it has exposed those behind the fake news phenomenon in the country and bring them to justice. My first question to you will be, has the Buhari government been able to unravel why people may want to deliberately spread false news or information about your government?
Yeah, there are many reasons. I can't speak for those who are behind this development, but I can hazard guesses why they do it. You know, one would be pure mischief, to just cause disenchantment in the country. For instance, when they came yesterday with the fake news that the president was traveling to the United States of America today, if you see the last line of that story, it was said that the trip may not be unconnected to the president's health. Can you just imagine that? I took time to read some of the reactions that followed that fake news, and you could see people saying all sorts of rubbish. That was their intention, so that they can expose the president to odium, if possible. So one reason is mischief, to cause odium, to cause disenchantment. Another reason will also be to demarket somebody. You want to demarket somebody and play up another person. That's why they also purvey fake news. Then, of course, another one is they want traffic to their websites, to their blogs and all that. They want traffic because traffic often determines advertising. So they want traffic, and they will stop at no extent to drive that traffic, which I think is very unscrupulous.
Is the government under any form of pressure, politically, of course, with this trend of fake news that has pervaded the social media space?
Well, if you know the president, who I earlier described as the captain of the team, the president rarely gets under pressure. He has learned to take things in his strides. Don't forget that he's been head of state before. Now he is a democratically elected government. He has seen a lot. So he has known how to take things in his strides. The trend may be unwholesome. It may be a bit unsavory, but in terms of is it worrying to the president and to government, not exactly. Not exactly.
Let me come to yet another professional. Before you got that appointment, you were an editor or the chairman of a newspaper. Mr. Oloja here it's a senior editor with the Guardian newspaper. For a traditional media, what kind of message does the new media poses, or threat it poses to the traditional media in the manner in which people post misinformation on that platform?
Well, First and foremost, it's good the way Mr. Adesina has reacted to it, that the president is very calm. And I would like to get people to also be calm about this, because it is not a Nigerian affair, it's a global affair. It's not something that is new. Fake news, propaganda, just whatever you call it, is for politics and business. People get political gain, people get financial gain from spreading fake news, from setting up fake websites all over the world. In Germany, they are complaining about it. In Australia, in the United States, you know, this thing gained its own prominence during the world wars. Propaganda to demarket here and there, as he said, but it gained currency during the last, this 2016 presidential election in the United States, when the presidential candidate, then now President of the United States, started accusing so many big networks of spreading and manufacturing fake news. Even pointed at CNN and some other big organs like that. They say, you are spreading fake news. And now fake news all over the place. It dominates discussion, even research and everything. And it's part of the forces of globalization. And this is what has come with the advent of social media they call citizen journalism. And I just want to say that we in the traditional media, well, sometimes we fall prey to this when we do not do our due diligence. But there is nothing to worry about this kind of development, because it's a global trend. The president of the most powerful nation on earth is complaining about the media, that they are spreading fake news about him. But we do not have to get worried about it, because it is an idea through citizen journalism whose time has come, and we have to deal with it. We have to manage it. What it requires is management.
Facebook alone has about 1.7 billion users.
Yes.
That's perhaps the population of China and United States put together. Those are perhaps the two biggest countries of the world.
Yes.
And if you look at that followership, what lesson does it give us exactly in Nigeria, for example, of the government of the day in terms of information dissemination?
No, definitely. You know that information managers have to be resourceful and tolerant, and have to also set up and improve their own machinery of management of public information, because all these things will come. As you have this kind of population, you know how many Nigerians are on Facebook and on Twitter and other digital platforms where they spread this news. All that is needed at this moment is not reading from the book of Lamentation, as I once said, is to manage, is to set up their own, because most public organs in Abuja that I know, that I have covered for about 29 years now as a journalist, do not have even websites that where people can get even quick information. They just react to what happened. They need to update their website. They need to get things done, because this era of citizen journalism requires resourcefulness, requires depth, it requires planning, it requires strategic planning, perhaps in a way that you can deal with it, because we are 180 million Nigerians and 6 different geopolitical zones and 36 states, 774 local governments. Huge.
Perhaps we should look at the consequence for some people who peddle fake news. Maybe they do not really understand the magnitude or the effect of what they're doing in the era where we have the narrative of hate speeches, the era where we have some ethnic divisions, we have sectional divisions, religious intolerance in some part of the country. For some of these engines, Facebook, Twitter, and all of these engines, what do you think the government should do to curb or to douse this kind of trend?
Well, definitely, as I said, they need to be resourceful the way they react to it, the way they have reacted to this one. Well, I think it's measured is good enough, but they also should improve on their own investment in software to track, because you can track some of these things, and they should also be very, very proactive in reacting to some of these things.
The Chinese government reacted, the American government reacted. It made Facebook to say they're going to send an alert or fake news alert on their engine. Do you think the federal government should do anything major? Send a message.
If you read the reactions to whatever Facebook itself has done, they are now saying that no, in democracy, free speech, because it's an attack. Whatever people are saying will be interpreted to me an attack on free press. And if you attack free press in a democracy, you see the reaction that will come. That this fake news is something that we have to live with and manage, because it will not disappear.
All right.
All it requires is resourcefulness in managing fake news, in improving their own organs, so that they can react to it. Yes, and social technologies.
All right, we take a break now. When we return, we highlight the possible dangers of fake news and their hidden agenda. That's next. Join us again, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Fake news is having a bit of a moment. The concern is growing, not just in Nigeria. The big number of social media and the almost uncensored content has made many platforms either a playing ground or a business hub or a tool for many kinds of agenda. As I have my guest here in the studio, Mr. Martin Zonojo, senior editor, member of the board of editors in the Guardian newspaper, and also the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina. If I may quickly go to our Abuja studio with Mr. Adesina. If you look at what has become a trend now, the big question will be, how far would the government go in stopping these fake news trend?
Very far as necessary, because government has a responsibility to ensure peace, to ensure amity, to ensure tranquility in the country. The Constitution says that protection of life and property is the sole responsibility of government. And we know that fake news can erode peace in a country. Fake news can lead to anarchy. We have seen what it did in Rwanda. It can lead to genocide. So it's the right of government, it's the responsibility of government to do all that needs to be done to ensure that the country is not thrown into a tailspin by those who purvey fake news. Fake news and hate news have a thin line dividing them. You will find that those who purvey fake news are actually hateful people, people filled with bile, who want to throw society into chaos. So government will do all that it should do to stop it.
We've heard the military come out to say they are monitoring the trends and the conversations online. The DOD also said that they cannot make arrests, though. But if you look at the reactions of countries like China, countries like the United States, is the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria going to make a major move on some of these platforms to show, especially when we have this kind of issues of ethnic divisions, sectional divisions, and differences across the land that's bringing tension? Is there any major statement that is going to be made in the coming days by the federal government?
I don't think we necessarily need that major statement, because already within our laws, we have enough to tackle this trend. I think it was Barrister Femi Falana who made a pronouncement a week or two ago that already in our statutes, we have provisions that can deal with fake news and with hate news. So it's just a matter of implementing what we have, using the law that we have, and anybody that is caught being at the bottom or being behind fake news or hate news should just answer for it. There is enough law already.
Mr. Adesina, is the federal government, especially the presidency, re-strategizing on the manner in which it disseminates information in the wake of this trend of fake news?
Yes, of course, you know that nothing is static in life, and you must always use all the media of mass communication available to you. We are there, we are on traditional media, we are on digital media, we are on social media. We all use all these medium of mass communication. But then, one thing we would not allow is for purveyors of fake news to dictate the pace to us. No, no. We won't start running helter-skelter when they come with their antics. Once we know that this is their intention and this is why they want to draw us out, we will not let them lead us by the nose. We will do what is right and proper at all times.
It then brings me to this question, Mr. Additional. When the conversation about whether or not the president was going to, the fake news of the president traveling today to the United States, to Washington, D.C. specifically, some of the conversation was whether or not the president was going to visit the flood-ravaged areas in Benue State. It then brings me to the question, is the president planning to visit Benue State, where those people were, over almost 4,000 homes have been affected by flooding?
Well, don't forget that over the weekend, the president issued directives on what the National Emergency Management Agency should do. That's a first step. If he needs to visit, that will be made known to Nigerians. It's the prerogative of the president to visit. He can go to any part of the country because he's the president of the whole country. So if he's going to visit, Nigerians will also get to know.
Okay, let me quickly come to Lagos, Mr. Oloja. It's an interesting period in our history as a people.
Yes.
You will see that even the government of the day did use the social media, and when it comes to the moment of politicking and campaigning, that again will be used massively. For some people, on the social media, critics of this government will say the reasons why this government may be talking about this issue is perhaps because they are afraid of criticism.
Well, you know, that's a very good context. Because, you know, in the 2015 election, even a sitting president was addressed publicly and even on the front pages of newspapers as clueless. And all sorts of qualifiers were used to describe the sitting president, all politics, as I said earlier, hate speeches and all these for politics, for business. And this requires management because like I said, all over the world, governments are worried. All over the world, even in the developed economies where they have had these social technologies where they use it, because there is a crisis of jurisdiction, quite unlike the traditional media. Crisis of jurisdiction. You don't know where people who are writing these fabrications are located most time. You can spread a fake news about Nigeria from Russia, from New Zealand, from any part of the world. Most of the powerful organs are not even located in Africa. And they can write fake news from here and get to any part of the world to just locate it so that you cannot even track them. However, what is needed, as I said concerning fake news, even on channel television a week ago, that it's the government too has the responsibility to address issues that trigger hate speeches, fake news, and what have you in this system. Because if citizens, political leaders, opposition leaders, the media managers are agitated about certain issues in the polity that have triggered this thing since 1966, they too should be addressed. This is one way of addressing this kind of
Mr. Martin Oloja, always a pleasure having you around. Senior editor of The Guardian newspapers, and Mr. Femi Additional, the special advisor to the president on media and publicity. Many thanks for your thoughts there. But just before we go, the difference between information and propaganda may be just one word: bias. But don't take for granted the power that that single four-letter word carries. But that's how where we drop it tonight on the program. Many thanks for being part of it. I'm Sean Okimale. Bye for now.